Educational games can sometimes be, well, not very game-like. The central tenet of any game is that it should be fun. Yet sometimes educational games lack this key element when creators focus more heavily on the learning content than the experience as a whole. This is even more important when the subject matter can be distressing or off-putting, like the current climate crisis. I'm Laura Hackett, a Senior Research Fellow at Christ Church University in Canterbury. My research is in climate education and carbon reduction, and for the last 4 years I've been looking at ways to engage students and staff here at the university in climate change education. Too often, climate change education initiatives leave participants feeling anxiety and despair at the enormity of the problem that they've just learned about. But games-based learning offers an alternative approach. Inspired by a variety of other climate games, I set out alongside colleagues from the Academy for Sustainable Futures to create one of the first educational escape rooms based on climate change. The premise for doing so was simple: create a learning experience that enticed people to participate, increased their knowledge about climate change, and left them feeling hopeful and ready to take action. And you can see here in this picture that this is what our first climate escape room looked like. We've got the lock boxes, we've got the time projected on the screen, and players are frantically putting together the puzzle and learning about climate science. So this climate escape room that we piloted here back in 2023, it's been facilitated about 35 times for nearly 200 people in our institution, and the data shows for itself just how well it's been received. About half of participants that have taken part in the escape room have also taken part in our accompanying pre and post surveys. 95% of players report an increase in knowledge about climate change, ranging from a moderate increase to a great increase of knowledge. People also find that the climate escape room increases their confidence to talk about climate change. We found about a 50% increase in self-reported confidence. Not only this, but the room also seems to increase players' self-reported likeliness to talk about climate change with others. 60% of players leave stating that they will tell others what they have learned, and many of those specifically state that it is the escape room format that motivates them to do so. For instance, they want to tell people about the fun experience that they've just had, as well as the learning that they've gained. The escape room has been incredibly popular and is one of the few events that we find students and staff actually get in contact with us and ask to attend, rather than us begging people to turn up. So the escape room that we've got currently works as a pop-up, meaning that we have to find a suitable room booking each time, pack it all away, and obviously set it up as well at the end of every session. And we have to transport the equipment across campus. Now this comes with its challenges, especially when the lifts aren't working. Some of the equipment could be quite heavy. It also has limits on the number of attendees at any one time. We set a maximum of 6 players for the pop-up escape room, although this has been stretched to 7 on occasion if someone asks us very nicely. But this means that fewer people can access the resource. It also can't be easily replicated in other settings due to the specific equipment and the resources that we created. So in response to those challenges, I set out to make a second climate escape room, and that's pictured here. Now this style, the second version, is a print and play or escape room in an envelope style, and it focuses more on everyday climate actions rather than the big picture climate science like the first version. The only resources are pieces of printed paper, and that's great for sharing widely, and it's an easy way to set up the game for lots of people, requiring literally just a printer and a pair of scissors. Some sheets need cutting according to the instructions, but most you can just print and then it's ready to use. And it's also fairly cost effective, particularly if you reuse the sheets of paper that you print. And the puzzles can be run for lots of people at the same time, so you don't have to put an upper limit, just whatever size room that you've got. You can have the game running in little tables throughout the room. But the trouble is that these puzzles rely heavily on word-based clues. If it's something that has to be printed, then it's only something that really works on a piece of paper. And word-based clues can be inaccessible for people with learning disabilities, like dyslexia, if you're looking for specific letters or words that have changed or different. People with sight impairments, some of the puzzles in this are mirror writing, things that may be a bit smaller, or you're relying on a bold letter or a bold word here and there. It can also be a challenge for those with English as an additional language, if all of the puzzles are based on wordplay and relying on having English and a real strong knowledge of the English language. And actually, it's also not as fun. I just want to make a game that's more inclusive, with physical objects that can be held, manipulated, and an environment that is immersive and exciting. So the inspiration for a new climate escape room struck me when I saw photos of sea creatures entangled in plastic. The netting reminded me of the plastic net bags that citrus fruit comes packaged in the supermarkets here in the UK. I could straight away picture a turtle figurine wrapped in a yellow lemon net, and the puzzle being, how do you free the turtle from the net? And maybe you could provide it with a pair of scissors, but the scissors are padlocked together, so you have to work out how to get them free. And so the creation of this third escape room about climate change began, of an under the sea themed experience that teaches about threats to our oceans. Now, it's not the most logical way to start an educational escape room. Typical advice is to start with the learning objectives or the story world as a whole before starting to create specific puzzles. But as I kept working on the turtle puzzle, the story world was born around it. An abandoned submarine under the sea that was collecting information about ocean pollution before its occupants had to make an emergency evacuation due to a malfunction. A one-off 60-minute supply of oxygen could be provided to anyone brave enough to finish the important work the crew had started. Their mission? To save the turtle and use their new knowledge to prevent this from happening again. So I'd had the idea, then of course I had to try it out. It's so important to test escape room puzzles, as I found out here. See, the single cable tie could be fairly easily pulled off without the need for even using the scissors. And in some prototypes, the netting could be pushed back to reveal the clue on the turtle's tummy. It took a few attempts to get the cable ties right, but in the end I figured out a solution of hooking it kind of around the fins of the turtle. And you had to use 2 cable ties, not just one. But another example of the importance of play testing is for a different puzzle that I started working on for this room. It originally used vinegar, but the smell was really strong in the office. That I thought I need a different acid here, so I went for lemon juice in the end, which smelled a lot milder and was still effective for what I needed it for, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't have tested it first. It was also important to me as a climate change activity that the materials that I use should be as sustainable as possible, ideally not generating additional plastic waste, since that was one of the key learning areas. So when playtesting, I found on YouTube a way to reuse cable ties so you don't have to cut them off, and that helped to save plastic cable ties from being thrown away. Making it relevant, rather than creating another set of guess what the creator is thinking puzzles, I wanted to create an experience where players seek out the relevant information because they know that it will help them to solve the room. I wanted to leave various sources of information hidden away for players to find and use, that they may discover new knowledge by themselves in a more autonomous way. For instance, the map in this photo here is visible straight away on the pinboard, but the atlas is sat on one of the top shelves amongst other books. Now players can see the map and they're looking at it and scrutinising it, and they want to know what it means. And when they notice the atlas, maybe quickly or maybe not for a long time, they'll hopefully try and open it, look through it and through a series of other kind of pointers, find the information that I'm trying to sort of signpost them to. Specifically, in this case, about the UK exporting the majority of the plastic waste that we claim is being recycled and actually dumping it to other countries that don't have the infrastructure to deal with it properly. This is a huge climate justice issue because it's predominantly women and the poor who are affected by the seas of plastic that our country's dumping. So the content as well is also relevant for a UK context because that's where our university is based. So I made sure that the climate information was tailored for where the players live, for maximum impact and hopefully maximum climate action. Linking to learning, this picture here, my plastic bottle clue, and UV torch. Scott Nicholson has got a great number of brilliant resources for creating educational escape rooms, and one helpful tip that I picked up from his work is the ask why principle. So why am I using this piece of equipment? For example, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics are probably not relevant to an under the sea world, so I'm not using them in this room. But providing a torch in a dark submarine probably does make sense. And so I tried to make the clues themselves, as well as the objects, linked to the learning. So this is actually a UV torch, and the content that you're learning as you shine it hopefully around the room and eventually find that the bottle is what lights up with the piece of information. The content is actually teaching about how macroplastic in the ocean gets broken down, one of the ways by the sun's UV rays, and so I'm making the connection, the UV torch and the UV rays from the sun. So I tried to ask why at every point of the process of creation to ensure that the clues were linked to learning. Keep or cull. I mentioned earlier about using vinegar and changing it to lemon juice for one puzzle. And actually something hard about creating games is having to make tough decisions about what to change or chop. I really liked the idea of revealing the code to a lockbox by pH testing different acidic and alkaline solutions. It links to learning about ocean acidification as oceans absorb CO2 and they become more acidic. But I just struggled to make it fit properly into the room without shoehorning it in or making the game too long or too complicated. It was also quite a hard puzzle to test and to get it reliable every time. It's quite hard to get the perfect shade of orange and for players to know that they've found the right shade of orange and which number that corresponds to. So I might have to save this one for another game. Setting the scene. Adding scene props creates the mood and also adds that sense of fun. I had an old Galaxy projector at home that I couldn't use anymore. The plug had broken, so I managed to bring it to the university, sort out a way to make it work, and I thought that would be perfect to give an underwater vibe to the room. I also have got a lot of submarine sonar tracks that I've been listening to find the perfect backing track to make sure that it's atmospheric but not too annoying. When you're trying to learn and trying to concentrate, you don't want the constant beeping getting in the way. So this was my office before I started this project. I had contacted the university estates team and asked would they like to give me a room to set up a permanent escape room, but I didn't hear much back. That's gone cold. So I thought I'm going to just take matters into my own hands and it's going to be set up in my office. And so I set to work moving the old computer screens that we didn't need, taking down old posters, cleaning the walls, throwing away the rubbish, and this is where we're at so far. So here it is with some clues. It's not quite fully decked out. I still need a few more books to go up on the shelf, and I'd like to get a desk lamp just to set the scene a little bit more. Also, that's as an extra layer of inclusivity and accessibility. If the room's a bit too dark and it's hard to read the clues, then a lamp just helps anyone who might need it. But yeah, every time that I look at it, I think of things that I want to add or change. So I just think, will it ever be finished? I don't know. I think a desk lamp would be good, as I said, and maybe some more like some other props to kind of make it feel a bit more like a submarine. And other educational improvements that could be made that I'm thinking about. I'm working on some kind of player worksheet, not in the sense of a school worksheet, but some kind of sheet where the players collate the information that they learn and maybe are signposted to different things that they might need to find the answers to, maybe some questions here and there that then they go searching to find out specifics about information. I hope that they'll take away from the room. Another tip I picked up from learning about building these educational escape rooms is that, well, actually not just educational escape rooms, but all escape rooms, players should never be working out what the puzzle is and only how to solve it. So there shouldn't be too much stuff in the room that's not relevant, or, well, really, ideally not anything that's not relevant. But there shouldn't be things that confuse players and they spend a long time on something that actually doesn't have any relevance to the puzzle at all. So some kind of worksheet that guides the players and focuses their attention so that they know exactly where the puzzles are and what they should be working on. Another benefit to that is that it adds a layer of player involvement and creativity. They actually can have a voice in the room. I've been inspired by, there's some escape rooms in Scotland that are really coming up with different types of game, and one of theirs is like a detective game, and the players actually have a back and forth with the facilitator. They write their theories about who committed the crime and then they post it through a little letterbox, and on the other side the facilitator's there and they read it and can exchange information as the room is happening. So I quite like that idea, and I'm inspired to maybe try and make that work somehow. I think that would be good for an educational context. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope you've been inspired to have some ideas for your own rooms, escape rooms, and if you have any questions, I hope I can answer them on Friday, on tomorrow's session. Thank you.